to change clothes. Hi, Democrats. Today is Wednesday, October 12th, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. So yesterday, when I was showing you guys my ballot, it occurred to me that we really need to talk about being prepared to vote when you show up to vote, knowing who is on the ballot and knowing what their qualifications are and all of that kind of good stuff. That's what I was going to talk about today. And then I watched the news, and then I answered my phone, and there were all of these conversations. I had folks calling me, wanting me to convince them to vote for Joy, and I don't think that that's a hard conversation. Wanting me to explain to them who Charles was, Charles Tecum was, and why it's important to vote for Charles. So what I decided to do today was I want to talk about all of the polls. And I want to talk about what that means for us as we show up at the ballot box. So I'm in Tulsa County, and I'm going to show you one more time. This is my ballot. It is 3 columns on this side, a column plus 1 on this side, and a whole nother ballot. So if I were voting in person, they would hand me 3 ballots to vote. That is a lot. You can't just show up on election day, not doing your research, not knowing who's on the ballot, and get in and get out. Not with a ballot that long, right? We're voting for 2 U.S. Senate seats. Every single Democrat has a congressional member to vote for. Then there's a bunch of county-wide, and then some towns, other municipal offices like school board and city council, judges. There's a lot to vote for. So today I'm going to focus on from U.S. Senate down to just the statewide held offices. I'm going to focus on the offices that are going to be on everybody's ballot. So having 2 U.S. Senate seats, and I say it all the time, and I realize that not everybody understands what that means. U.S. Senate seats are staggered on purpose. You know how you hear about the senior senator and the junior senator? They are staggered for a reason, right? So that there's always representation and there's some consistency and cohesion. That's not what's happening this cycle. Senator Inhofe announced his retirement back in March. So that seat, now we're trying to fill it. So we have 2 seats. We have Kendra Horn, who is a former congressional member out of Congressional District 5, which is Oklahoma City and surrounding counties. And I'm not going to label the counties because they are different from when she served. And Kendra served in a seat. Kendra won in a seat that she was predicted not to have a shot in heck of winning. But Kendra knows what she's doing, and she has a heart for the work that she's doing. She understands that she will be working for Oklahoma, unlike the guy that she's running against, who is famous for saying that he pays his own salary. So we have Kendra Horn running for the seat vacated by Jim Inhofe. James Lankford is on the ballot. And I'll remind you who James Lankford is because you don't see him in the district. James Lankford is the guy who you might get confused and thinks he works in Texas because he's always at the border. James Lankford is the junior senator from Oklahoma. He is on the ballot. We have a real choice against James Lankford, and that is Madison Horn. Madison Horn is a cybersecurity professional who grew up in Stillwell, Oklahoma. So she is from Oklahoma. Right after college, she pursued professional pursuits outside of the state, but her family still lived here. And she kept looking back at Oklahoma, hoping that things would get better. She came back to Oklahoma to help make Oklahoma better. So those are our 2 U.S. Senate candidates. We have Madison Horn and Kendra Horn. not related, just happen to have the same last name. But wouldn't it be great if we could have two Senator Horns from the state of Oklahoma? Then we have congressional. Each congressional district has its own person running, and every congressional district in the state of Oklahoma has a Democrat running. You wouldn't know that by watching the news because no one talks about it. But the reality is, every Oklahoman has a Democrat to vote for Congress, to represent us in Congress. In Congressional District 1, which is the Tulsa area, we have Adam Martin. Adam Martin is a young man who is a regional director for, I guess I won't say his company, but for a major drugstore chain. He went to law school. He put taking the bar on hold to run for office. But he's a young guy who's in the community, who's known in the community. That's in Congressional District 1. Congressional District 2, which encompasses the entire eastern border of the state, we have Naomi Andrews. Again, no relation. Naomi Andrews grew up in Beggs, Oklahoma. She currently resides in Tulsa. And when we got down to the wire and it looked like there was not going to be a Democrat who was going to stand up for her hometown, she decided to put her name in the hat and run. And she is all over the place, all over the district, getting to know the district, and will be ready day one to represent Congressional District 2. That's the seat formerly held by Mark Wayne Mullen. Congressional District 3, which encompasses the entire western coast of the state, we have Jeremiah Ross, who is an attorney who is running to represent Congressional District 3. Congressional District 4, which is the mid-southern part of the state, kind of the middle. So it starts in Norman and it encompasses most of our military installations. We have Mary Brannon running to represent Congressional District 4. And then Congressional District 5, which now is most of, or big portion of, Oklahoma County, parts of Lincoln County, Logan County, Canadian County, and Pottawatomie County. Kind of had to picture the map. We have Joshua Harris Till, who's running for that office. Joshua Harris Till, I don't know, I think Joshua was born wanting to serve the state of Oklahoma in Congress. He fresh out of college, ran for Congress in Congressional District 2. He now has worked on many campaigns, both at a state level, and he did some time on a presidential campaign. He knows better what he's doing now. He hasn't lost his heart for doing the work. He is out in the district, and he's been doing work in the community and statewide as the former president of Young Democrats of America. He has not lost his desire to help improve Oklahoma and to help get Oklahoma on the map and help get Oklahoma attention all over the nation. He's running for Congress in Congressional District 5. I go through all of that explanation because I think it's important that you know who they are. I think it's important that you know that the folks who are running as Democrats aren't just names. They're not just people who've been around. They are people who are better than qualified for the jobs that they're running for. They are people who actually absolutely represent Oklahoma. And frankly, they look like Oklahoma. In that list, I listed off a couple of tribal citizens, African-American folks, lawyers, young people, former teachers and social workers. The folks that we have running, tech professionals, the folks that we have running represent Oklahoma. They look and feel like Oklahoma. And I think that we need a little bit of that kind of diversity to take the whole picture into account when they're in DC, that they are representing all of Oklahoma, not just a special interest. Now, on the statewide level, you've heard the polls. You've heard the polls, and if you've been around at least two Democrats at any time in the last month, you can feel the electricity and the energy because Democrats are excited because we absolutely have a shot at some elected Democrats on a statewide level. Now, most of the excitement is surrounding the governor's race because that's the top of the ticket. And our gubernatorial candidate, Joy Hoffmeister, is neck and neck with an incumbent. Let me tell you what that means in a state like Oklahoma. Everyone just considers Oklahoma to be a Republican state. I like to think that we're basically a non-voting state, that if we actually voted our values, we would be a more balanced state. But everybody writes us off that we're a Republican state. And let's pretend like that's what we are. We're a Republican state. We have a Republican incumbent governor, and we have a Democrat running, and they're neck and neck. That's a big deal. That's more than how they're covering it. It is a big deal for our candidate to be neck and neck and in some polls ahead. That demonstrates real momentum, and it also says a lot about our incumbent and how strongly people want him out of that office. I've had people have reached out to me with concerns. Superintendent Hoffmeister used to be a Republican. I got to tell you, in doing the work, and I travel all over the state and meet with Democrats all over the place, not all people who are Democrats today were always Democrats. Not all people who are doing the work today were always Democrats. We are a big tent, and we welcome folks who have a change of heart and who recognize that we are the party who is looking out for the people of Oklahoma. And for those of you who wonder, will she be able to govern like a Democrat? I say to you, if that is your concern, it is not mine, and I have had many conversations with her. I say to you, if we don't elect help, if we don't add to the cabinet more Democrats, it is going to be harder for her to govern as a Democrat. So we're all focused on the gubernatorial race because that's the big cheese. That's the big deal. But we also need to focus on the other cabinet seats so that she has help, so that she is not in there fighting by herself. She cannot be an army of one. We need to send her help. And it's really important. If Joy is the only one of our state candidates to win, she will spend her entire term fighting off the advances of a lieutenant governor who will be running for governor the entirety of her time, because that's just what happens. She needs help. So for lieutenant governor, we have Melinda Elizadeh Fard. She is an immigration attorney out of Oklahoma City who actually sat down, studied the job description of lieutenant governor and said, hey, I can do that. I understand that the job of lieutenant governor is to support the governor. However, to be the checks and balances behind the governor, to actually work with the state Senate, because they're the president of the Senate, and when ridiculous bills that suck up a lot of time on the Senate floor come up, the president of the Senate could say, you know what, this isn't worth the time of the legislature. Our current lieutenant governor doesn't do that. Our current lieutenant governor truly is getting a pass. It was his signatures on many of the invoices in the Swatley scandal. No one's talking about that. Absolutely, the buck stops with the governor, but he didn't do it alone. He did not act alone. And if we act like the governor's the only race, I think we're missing a real opportunity. Regarding state treasurer, and I'll just keep using Swatley's because I think everybody understands about Swatley's. There's a process when you're going to spend that kind of money in the state. The governor doesn't have like a golden pen. There's a process. You have to put it on a public and open meetings agenda. You have to give people time to discuss it. And if you don't, the state treasurer shouldn't say it's okay to spend that money. But that's what happened. Now, the Republican who's running against Charles DeCoon has been rated by the FDIC as not qualified. Charles DeCoon is a financial professional. He currently serves as a treasurer on a water board that has a better credit rating than the state of Oklahoma. I got to tell you, for my vote, I want someone who can improve the credit rating for the state of Oklahoma, and that's Charles DeCoon. Warrigia Bowman. I'm going to skip and talk about Gina last. Warrigia Bowman, Professor Dr. Warrigia Bowman. She is a law school professor at TU that teaches energy law, water law, and has published articles and books on telecommunications and energy law. A lot of people don't know that the Corporation Commission regulates energy, telecommunications, and water. It regulates usage, and here's the important part, it regulates the expense. So when an OG&E or ONG comes to the state and says, we want to raise your rates, we don't have to say, it was a storm, so sure. The Corporation Commission is supposed to ask questions. They're supposed to negotiate, and they could actually even say no. And in some states, the Corporation Commission says no. Our state says, sure, double, triple Oklahomans' utility bills. All the while, it's still one-party rule. And that's what they did all the while that entire party is out there complaining about inflation, when they had the key, when they had the power to block this inflationary tax. But they didn't. So Warigia Bowman running for Corporation Commission is important to you whether you know it or not, because I know my electric bill tripled in 1 month's time, and I can't be alone. But our Corporation Commission could have stopped that. Then we have Jack Henderson, who's running for Labor Commissioner. And I know I'm talking slow, but I want you guys, I hope you're taking notes. Jack Henderson has 37 years at the CWA union. He has worked just as a worker all the way up to top negotiator. So he understands how labor relations works. He doesn't believe in right to work. He wants to stop wage theft. And that's where you're contracted to work 40 hours, but they make you work 50 and they pay you just a salary. That's wage theft. Jack wants to tackle that because he believes that Oklahomans who work deserve a livable wage. Then we have Gina Nelson. Gina Nelson is running for Superintendent of Public Instruction. She is a 2020 Teacher of the Year. And until very recently, when she stepped away from the classroom to focus on her election, she was actually in the classroom. Who better to know what teachers are thinking? Who better to know what's actually being taught in the schools than a teacher who's actually in the classroom right now, who's currently in the classroom? And if you've ever heard her speak, you know that she believes in her heart about public education. And she believes in taking care of rural education. She is a product of rural public education. She's traveling the entire state. She's not satisfied to just sit in her car and make videos and threaten to defund public education. She's going out and actually talking to parents, actually talking to educators. And as a teacher, she was actually talking to students. That's who we need in that spot. That's who we need. I took my time today because I wanted you to know who these people are. I wanted you to understand that they're not just names, but that they are all better than qualified for the jobs that they're running for. You won't hear about that on the news. They are also ran. There's big stories about the majority party, and they will mention the Democrat sometimes, or they'll just call them the opponent. What I wanted to do is make sure that you understood who they were and heard about their qualifications, because I think it's hard to hear about these qualifications, about these amazing humans, and not give them a second look, not decide that they are who we need to vote for. We need a real change in who's representing us. We need folks that are Oklahoma. That's who we need. We need folks who look like Oklahoma. What that means is that all Oklahomans will have a voice at the table. And it won't just be to satisfy the egos and the agendas that are being handed down to us from ALEC. It won't be the folks who went away to Republican camp, understood what bills they were supposed to run, whether it had anything to do with Oklahoma or not, and shoved those bills through. These are actual people who've lived the life that they're trying to improve. I wanted to take today, talk in my calm voice, making as few faces as possible so I wouldn't be a distraction, and introduce you to the folks who are running on a statewide level, the folks who are going to be on every one of your ballots. Everyone in the state of Oklahoma are going to have these folks on their ballots. I wanted you to at least know who they were. Now, before I end, I want to be very clear. I want you to know who they are, but I also want you to vote the entire ballot, because that's not the entire ballot. I've now talked straight for 20 minutes, and that's not the entire ballot. I have a city council race. I have several judges. I have, I think the tax assessor is up in Oklahoma, in Tulsa. I have other races on my ballot, and I need you to research your ballot so that you know who the rest of the people are on your ballot. And I need you to vote your entire ballot. The folks I talked about today are statewide, and they're on everybody's ballot. But folks like the tax assessor and my city councilor, your city councilor, they're shopping at the same grocery store that I shop at. And so they are in touch of what I'm doing. It's very important to vote for your city council, your county commission, your tax assessor, your tax auditor. It's very important to vote for those. And a lot of times people hear so much about the governor's race that they vote the governor's race, they get down there, they don't know the rest of the names, and they don't vote the rest of their ballot. I want to encourage you to educate yourself about everyone and every issue that's on your ballot. And then educate everybody you come in contact with about everyone and every issue that's going to be on the ballot. And then make a plan to vote and help them. We all have to show up. There are amazing polls that show that we have an opportunity to quit STIT and choose joy. We have a real opportunity to have a governor who's not all caught up in their ego. We have a real opportunity for the rest of these seats, but it only counts if we show up and we take some folks with us. We have to show up in amazing numbers that they can't dispute and they can't turn into the big lie 2.0. We have to show up. I don't want Oklahoma to be number 50 in voter participation. And that's not something that the governor is in charge of. He's in charge of us being number 50 in a whole bunch of categories. But number 50 in voter participation is on us. We all have a personal responsibility to do our civic duty and exercise our right to vote, the entire ballot. Don't be mad at the judges when they convict your cousin or your neighbor. Don't be mad at them then. Now is the time to pick the right judge. Alrighty, thanks for joining me. I'll be back here tomorrow at 4:15, and you guys have a great evening.